All right, everybody, welcome to our lesson for this week on the Mexican Revolution. And you can take a look at the objectives and standards, please, to explain the purpose of the Mexican Revolution and analyze the result of the revolution in Mexico. And please take a look at the standards, too. Okay, so what you think about this? So we've learned this week that there are some things going on in Mexico that were angering people about their government and their leadership. So what was going on in Mexico that angered the people? And please make sure you answer this question in the box or the section that says "Think about this." And our essential question: what was the result of the Mexican Revolution? Okay, so many people began to speak out against the rule of Diaz in the beginning of the 1900s. Intellectuals wanted more liberal ideas, so more freedom and more free thinking. Farmers demanded more land. Workers demanded better wages. And even those who had been supporters of Diaz also looked to have some reforms initiated as well. So Francisco Madero was wealthy, and he was also educated in France and the United States. And he wants more of a democracy set up in Mexico. And he decided to run for president in 1910. Diaz, however, had him arrested and exiled to the United States. And Madero, while he's exiled in the United States, decides to call for an armed revolution against Diaz. There's a picture of him there. So the revolution was slow to start, but it began to spread around the country. In the north, the revolution was led by Francisco Pancho Villa, and in the south, it was led by Emiliano Zapata. Both were successful against Diaz and his army, and in 1911, Diaz agreed to step down as leader of Mexico. So Madero was elected president in November 1911, but he was also not revolutionary enough for some people, including some of the people who had kind of supported him before, including Villa and Sabato, and they also took up arms against him. And in 1913, Madero finally resigned as president as well. So a military general, Victoriano Huerta, took control of Mexico after Madero, and Madero was assassinated a little bit after that, and it is reported that probably at the hand of Huerta, was probably by his command, that Madero was assassinated. Huerta was not well liked either, and Villa and Zapata also wanted to stop Huerta. They worked together with another politician named Venustiano Carranza, who I guess that was another politician, and they worked to overthrow Huerta as well. So Carranza, Villa, and Zapata were able to capture the countryside of Mexico, and they finally took control of the capital and overthrew Huerta. Carranza then took control of the government, and then he actually decided to turn on his former allies, Villa and Zapata, as well. Villa and Zapata continued to fight in the early 1900s, up until when Carranza tricked Zapata and had him murdered. And this brings about an end to the Mexican Revolution somewhat. Carranza began to reform the Mexican Constitution and government, but he doesn't really support it. He doesn't really agree with it. So while he was enacting these reforms, he doesn't really initiate them. And he will finally be overthrown as well. So again, another Mexican leader that's going to be overthrown. Alvaro Obregón took control as a dictator, but he did not remain that way. He supported the new reforms proposed by the updated Constitution. However, in 1928, he himself will also be assassinated, and Mexico is going to struggle with war and peace for the next many years to come. There's going to be ups and downs for the country, but eventually they will come to somewhat of a stable peace. But not, and as they start to become more of a stable country, the world itself is going to become more unstable, and we'll be looking at that more in our next unit as we move into World War I. Okay, just kind of wrap it up here. So remember that Mexico went through a civil war to remove leaders and establish new ones. There were many different Mexican leaders and many different reasons for them being overthrown or assassinated. But Mexico goes through some pretty tumultuous times with different leaders and leadership and things like that. And the country does finally create some reforms, but they still faced other troubles as well. So even though Mexico seems to be settling down from the Civil War part and the fighting has ended, there's still some disagreements between many of the leaders and the people, so Mexico will really struggle for a couple of years. All right, so that's all I have for this lesson. Please make sure you do the questions, and just a reminder, make sure you do the think about this question from the beginning. Make sure you answer that in the think about this section. And other than that, I will see and talk to you later. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening.